Welcome, everybody. Oh, okay, got it. Welcome, everybody. And I'm so excited that you're here because I know you at this point of the day, you've probably had a long day. So I just really appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. And we're going to be talking about ideas and strategies and resources for linking literacy and social emotional development. And I know that you all are doing great things. So we're a smaller group. So if you have ideas to share or books that you found that are really engaging and work really well with children, please feel free to unmute, put it in chat. Sometimes I miss some of the chats just because of, trying to get through slides, but please feel free to share that information. All right, we're going to jump right in here. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to do in our hour and a half together. So we're going to talk just a little bit about why are we even talking about this? What is this link between social, emotional, and literacy, and why is it important? And then I'm just going to throw out kind of from my experience, some ideas, strategies, and resources. And you have the PowerPoint handout as well as a resource sheet that has those resources on it. But again, if you know of some other ones, if you could just put them in chat or either again unmute and just share those, that's great. And we'll also be giving examples of just different books and storytelling, and then we'll wrap up. So, if you notice, even on this slide, I have visuals and I have the print, which I think is a perfect example of that link between social, emotional, and literacy, because, with some of our children, having those visuals helps them be more successful, helps them feel more competent and confident, because they might not know what those words mean, what those are yet. So that's our first example of the link here. So as we think about this, I want you to think of an emotion word that starts with the first letter of your name. So for me, I put thrilled. And then if you'll write that in chat. So just take a few minutes and think of an emotion word that starts with the first letter of your name. Joyful. All right. Caring. Peppy. Ooh, that's a really good one. Peppy. Cheerful. Lively. Man, these are great kind for 4 o'clock in the afternoon. These are good emotion words. Okay, so as people are putting this in here, think about what kind of skills did you need to be able to do this activity? Oh, literacy, there's a good one. Okay, what skills did you have to be successful at this activity? Again, you can just unmute if that's easier.
You'd have to have a vocabulary of emotional words.
Yeah, first of all, I got to know what emotion is, and then I got to have a vocabulary of emotion words. Letter recognition, spelling, visuals of emotions. I got to be able to read, right? Well, read and write, because you got to read and then write it in chat. Understand the meaning of the words in the activity. Those emotion words, like you said. I got to know the first letter of my name. Got to follow directions. So that again is that it just shows you right off that link, that connectedness between social, emotional, and literacy. So we're going to keep building on that idea, so that we're all kind of thinking about this in the same way. When we think about social emotional skills and the kind of skills that we're trying to develop in preschoolers, it's part of that is that setting things up in a way where they can feel competent and confident, and they really develop that can-do attitude, that self-regulation piece that we know is tough, but it's a huge life skill that we know really helps them when it comes to school readiness kinds of things. Just developing relationships with adults as well as their peers, making friends, with emotions, beginning to learn how to label and understand what those emotions feel like and express those emotions and manage those emotions, being empathetic, persisting with things where they can feel competent and confident enough, following directions, problem solving. So all those, that's a lot of skills. And then if we think about those early literacy skills, and then we're also talking about, just developing that love of books, appreciation of books early on, phonological awareness, alphabet knowledge, print concepts and conversations and oral language and just conventions of print, right? And early writing. So those are just two areas of development, and that is a lot of skills. So think about being 3, 4, and 5 and learning all these skills. These are things even as adults sometimes that we struggle with. So any opportunity that we have to give children more opportunities to practice these skills and get that strong foundation, that social emotional foundation, the more successful they'll be. So, when you say these skills out loud and you think about how many skills there are, I had this great cartoon and it showed a little boy with 2 alphabet books and he's going, A is for apple. And then he looks in the other book and it says A is for apple. And then B is for ball. B is for ball. And then he turns the page and it's C and he goes, C is for cat. C is for car. He's like, I don't know who to believe anymore. So you think about just starting to learn that and how confusing that can be. I mean, again, just providing lots and lots of opportunities to practice these skills. So what do we know about this link? We know that how children feel is as important as how they think, and particularly when we're thinking about school readiness. And that emotional development occurs on a parallel path to early literacy development, but that both of those things happen within the context of those positive relationships that we know children need when they're young to be successful. And that in general, most children are going to do just fine when they have those adults in their life who talk to them and read to them and play with them. And they have those safe and nurturing environments where it's safe to explore and learn. So, we often talk about literacy rich environments. We don't always talk about those social environments or those social emotional environments, but think about how many of the things that we do when we look at our environments and think about, have I set this up where children are getting those rich literacy experiences? All those things support social emotional too, because think about the things like, when it's your turn and it has your name and your photo there. So you're learning to recognize your name. You're learning to take turns, writing your name, seeing your friends' names in print, stringing the beads, that strengthening those muscles where I'm learning to write, having those books in the environment that have different print and they cover different areas, so they are learning those social emotional skills as well as learning how to read and love books and learning words and alphabets and all those things. So those literacy rich environments that we have really support those social emotional skills also. And we also know that the single most important activity for building understanding and skills essential for reading success appears to be reading aloud to children. And that goes back to, developing that love of books and storytelling at an early age. And when we instill that love of books and reading and it's fun, that's again, that lifelong learner kind of thing that set the stage right from the beginning. And, they've also even shown that children who really value books and love books and see that as a fun thing, that they're much more motivated to read on their own and will continue to do that throughout life. And, we also know that even though we know how important reading aloud is, that it's so much more than just reading aloud. It's the way books are shared with children. And, if you look back in time, it's really interesting, because if you look back to like the 80s and the things that were going on around book reading, it was really thought that story time was important, but that story time was successful if it had few interruptions and the children just listened quietly. But since that time, there have been lots of studies that have shown that the real value wasn't just reading aloud and having children just listen, but the quality of the read aloud interactions, that children should be actively engaged and that we should intentionally encourage that engagement. So, think about the ways that you engage and encourage children so that they develop that love of reading. And when they see books, they get really excited. So some of you are probably familiar with this book, Z is for Moose, and have probably used it in your classrooms. But I want you to, I'm not going to read the book to you just time wise, but I'm going to tell you about this book if you aren't familiar with it. And I want you to think about what is that link between social, emotional, and literacy here. So this is an alphabet book. And Zebra's in charge. It's a parade, and he's lining everybody up in order, the A, B, C, D, like that. And so, everybody is in line, and Moose is so excited. I mean, he can like barely stand it. So as they start doing A, B, C, Moose keeps popping up on the page. Is it my turn yet? My turn yet? And Zebra keeps going, Moose, not yet, not yet. So he just keeps popping up, and then right before it gets to M, he's just beside himself with excitement. And you turn the page and it says, M is for mouse. And Moose just has this huge meltdown. It's like, what? And so he just starts destroying like the next letters that comes up. He colors all over them, and Zebra keeps going, Moose, stop. And so then they keep going with the parade, and Moose starts crying, just boo-hooing. And Zebra says, Moose, it's okay. You can still be in the parade. And Moose is thinking, no, I can't. I mean, we passed M way back there. And so it ends with Z is for Zebra's friend Moose. And, so think about those connections right there in engaging children in this book, which is really fun, but yet, you can get them to think about, the fact that, he's coloring over all the other letters because he's so upset. What else could he do? And what would have happened if M had been for Moose? How would the story have been different? So that book in and of itself is such a great link between that literacy and social emotional development piece. So another link that, is a very natural link is vocabulary, because we know that vocabulary is really important to children, just vocabulary in general. And, there's even been studies that have shown that vocabulary development by age 3 has been found to predict reading achievement by 3rd grade. So think about preschool and children coming to us at 3 and what their vocabulary is like. So that's something we can do something about. We can make sure that we do things where they have opportunities to really increase their vocabulary. Also have found that most children who begin kindergarten with a deficiency in vocabulary and just kind of that love of reading, that they have a really hard time catching up, and sometimes rarely catch up because of that. So it just shows the importance of vocabulary, and thinking about how we build vocabulary. So for instance, if we have the word disappear, we're reading a book and the word disappear is in it. And as we're introducing that word, we have bubbles, and we blow the bubbles and we pop the bubbles. And then when children go to centers, we've worked out things like in the science center, or whatever you might call that center, maybe we have ice cubes. and we make a chart. Everybody guesses to see how long they think it's going to take the ice cube to disappear. Now you could leave that throughout the day and keep going back and checking and charting what the time is, or as with an adult there, you could take a blow dryer and see how long it takes to melt it, those kinds of things, but they can see it actually disappear. You know, they can paint with water on a hot day when you go outside and see how long it takes your painting to disappear. So bringing it to life for children, where they really get it, they understand that word. And it's the same thing for emotional vocabulary. We know that the larger and the more complex of feeling of vocabulary that a child has, that it's easier for them to make finer discriminations about their own feelings and to communicate with others what those feelings are, as well as to be able to start to read others' feelings. So developing some of those empathy and some of those other skills. So that's that big link right off the bat that we know is important. So I wanted to just share this example with you guys, because when we think about that whole idea around reading books and engaging children as well as vocabulary is so important. So how do we make sure that children get these words, right? So just this example of this, we were reading the book, Baby Whales Drink Milk, and that word gigantic is in it, because baby whales are gigantic at birth. They're 14 feet long. So, you know, how would you define gigantic for children? What might you say? Anybody want to just jump in? Okay, I'll tell you what we did. So, you know, I mean, you could say gigantic is really, really big, but we took a ribbon. That's why that green thing is down on the bottom of the slide there. We took a ribbon and we had already cut it 14 feet long. And so we had the children line up. This was before COVID. So, I mean, you'd have to space them out more now, but we had the children line up along the ribbon, and then we counted how many children were 14 feet. So you're throwing math in there also. And there was a child with visual impairments who went along the other side and walked along so she could see, you know, feel how long that was. And then we put the ribbon up on the wall and they measured everything all day long to see which things were gigantic. And when they were getting ready to leave, one of the little boys, his mom had just had a baby and she came to the door with the baby. So they brought the baby in, because remember, this is a baby whale we're talking about here. So they put the baby up against the 14 feet on the wall, the gigantic. And I mean, they talked about gigantic for days. They wanted to find things that were gigantic. They measured everything. The parents were saying, all they do at home is walk around trying to see what's 14 feet and how many feet. Well, they get it, right? I mean, that done in that way, they get what gigantic means, and they're going to use that word and talk about that word. Think about too, just those everyday things that we do, like schedules, and how you can work in vocabulary. So this is a kind of fun example of that. Oops. Well, maybe.
Hogan, what's this? Circle. Past, present, or future? Past. Did we already do circle?
Yeah.
We did. What's present again? Present means we're doing it right now. Are we doing it right now, Aaliyah? Yep. Circle is right now. That's what we're doing right now. Dustin, what's this? Home. Past, present, or future? Future. It's coming up.
So what a great way to kind of introduce those words and have children think about that. The other thing is just, you know, there are books sometimes that have not only a wide range of words, but also different words that mean kind of the same thing. Like in the Grumpy Pets, they talk about being crabby, being cranky, being grouchy, being moody. So just expanding those and really talking about what's the difference in those? What does that feel like, right? And then wordless picture books. That's such a fun way to just build on, when you think about language, children talking, their imagination, their memory. And this particular book I picked, if you're not familiar with this one, because it has great expressions. If you can see Daisy's face, I mean, it has great emotion faces, because in the book, it shows pictures of Daisy playing with her favorite ball, and another dog comes along and they're playing, but the dog has sharp teeth. And so when he goes to make the ball kind of roll, he pops the ball, which is that bottom picture down there. But think about the vocabulary word infer, because with picture books, well, you could do that with any book, but think about, what does infer mean? So, getting children to think about, usually with books, we take clues. It's like being a detective when you think about the word infer, and we take clues and from the words in the book and the pictures in the book, and then the things in our brain that we think about when the book's being read, and we infer, we make inferences, right? So it's a fun vocabulary word for them to do and to think about, how can we infer using a book with no words? And so looking at the pictures and making those inferences about what you think is happening can be a really fun way to kind of introduce that word. And the other thing is, like, we can go through this book the first time and kind of tell the story and point out the pictures as we think it's happening, and then get them to retell the story. Not that same idea around sequencing stories, but it doesn't matter. They don't have to tell the story like I told the story. They can look at the pictures and make up their own story. So again, a fun way to engage them, and then to let them do storytelling of their own based on those pictures to figure out. So just think about the possibilities and showing them different kinds of books, right? So books with words, books without words, and what we do with those. And thinking about, again, kind of what kinds of things do you do to engage children, to get them excited about what you're going to read, and how you mix that up, right? Because if we did the same thing all the time, they wouldn't get as pulled into it. So let's say we have a pillowcase and we put something in it related to the book we're going to read, and we get them to fill it and see if they can figure out what our book's going to be about that day. So anybody have a guess what our book's about?
Maybe a pig?
Ah, all right. That was a good one. Yes, it's a pig. So, okay. So we're going to read If You Give a Pig a Pancake, right? So I'm going to just use this as an example of that. We know that those repeated read alouds, that again is such a great social emotional link, because when we read books more than once, we know that children, they become much more competent and confident. It becomes their story. It increases their vocabulary, because the more we read it, the more they understand it, the more they understand the words. They can retell the story. They can make up their own story based on that. They can change the endings of the stories, just the pure interactions of things that happen. So the conversations, the oral language, the relationship piece that's there. And so this was actually from a project that we had years ago, where you would read the same book for a week, but every day you would pull out a different vocabulary word or a different theme from that book, and you would build on that. So just two examples here, like sticky and homesick. And, then doing music activities, you would do something related to that vocabulary word during art, during dramatic play, outside. So lots of opportunities for children to kind of understand what that word is. And in this particular classroom, the one that I'm using this example from, is they every day, so that means, yeah, it took a little bit of work, but every day they had a little bulletin board, and it would have clues about what the word is for that day. And I mean, children would run in that classroom, and it was the first place they would go. It's like they couldn't wait to see if they could figure out what the word was. So can anybody guess what the word is? You got lots of clues there. Sticky. Okay, thanks, Melissa. Saw that, and sorry, I didn't see it in chat. Okay, so it's sticky. And, you know, the day that I was in there observing the kids, when they came in, some of them were because the word was up there for them, right? I just did that for us for fun to try to guess it. But the word, this is what they would see with the word up there. And some children were literally trying to sound out what the word was, where other children weren't at that point yet, but they were looking at the pictures. And even the contact paper that they put up there, they had pulled off, you know, where it really was sticky if you touched it. So again, kids were excited about what the vocabulary was and learning that. They also would send little family notes home to let families know which book they were going to be reading, some things they could ask their child about the book and what the vocabulary words were going to be for that week, since again, these were read every single day. So it was a fun way to engage families in having conversations with their children, which then again increase those interactions and relationship piece. And, you know, this is from the babies2bookworms.com. That's on your resource list because they have lots of different ideas on that site. But thinking about how, because we read a lot of these kind, you know, what if you give a mouse, I mean, all the different ones, right? But then they can create their own story. Like if you give a bear a brownie, if you give a whale a watermelon, and they can create their own stories. That might be drawing pictures of the stories, and then you help them write them. But it's such a fun way to get them engaged in writing their own story around that. And then thinking about letters, you know, the pancakes related to the story. So having like little pancakes cut out with the uppercase letter on it. And then the pats of butter are the lowercase letters. So they match the butter to the pancake piece to practice upper and lowercase letters. So a fun way to do that. So thinking about like a word like hibernation. So Bear Snores On, you know, that book that if children are really engaged in that, and that we do extra things because we know we're going to teach them that word hibernation because that's what Bear's doing here and what that means, and then adding some information, maybe from a book, maybe just adding that information about things like, did you know that bears may eat more than 90 pounds of food a day before they hibernate? And they will like gain up to 1,000 to 1,200 extra pounds, doubling their body weight before they hibernate. So, you know, some of those kind of fun facts to know because we know that they're so engaged in the book. And then here's this is from the Hi Mama website, but this is a really fun letter game on here. So that if you're reading books about bears and they're engaged in that, where it gives you the little printout of the alphabets as fish, and then you feed the bear. So before the bear hibernates, we got to feed him, right? So, you know, younger children, you can see where it has, you know, like for younger children who may not know all the sounds yet, they can feed the bear the D, try to find the D fish and do that. But notice like for the preschoolers, you can expand on that activity, trying to think of a food that starts with the letter F that they could eat before they hibernate. But you make it shows you how to make a little bear out of just a paper sack, and then the kids can feed the bear before it hibernates. So thinking about how you could just expand in a fun way on the kinds of things they're interested in. So, you know, we're going on a bear hunt. It's always a fun one that you can do anything with. And it's got that movement piece in there. And we know they need that movement, and that helps with the behavior kinds of things too. So we're going on a bear hunt. More Bears. If you haven't seen that book, it's a fun book to get children interested in writing, because it's about an author and he's writing a book, and in the book he goes, there are no bears in this book, none. And then all of a sudden he hears a voice that says, more bears. And he's like, where did that come from? And then so he starts writing and they're like, more bears. And so he adds a bear and they keep saying more bears and he keeps adding stories about a bear. And, it just kind of goes on until there's so many bears that they're pushing each other off the page. And so they all just have to leave because there are too many bears. So it's a fun book to get children engaged in writing. So what are some of your favorite books about bears? Like if the children are really interested in bears, what are some of the books that you've used that have worked really well in engaging? Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Yep. Any others? Somebody in the Three Blairs. That's a great one. I have a daughter named Blair, and so I got one of those books for her way back. That's a fun one. Oh, I don't know that one. Bialaski's Christmas, is that right? Brother Bear. Bear Snores On. All the bear books are fun ones. I mean, that author of Bear Snores On. Okay, so if you think of more, put them in the chat or jump in here, because again, kind of giving us more ideas about some of those. So another link with this is letter knowledge, because we know how important letter knowledge is, that children start to learn not only the letter names, but the sounds of letters, and how that is one of the indicators of reading success also. But, as we're teaching children letters and increasing their knowledge around letters, and we're feeling like, they're really getting these letters, why not then do an alphabet with emotion words on it to expand their emotion vocabulary? So we're going to take a few minutes, and we're just going to take 2 minutes. So like, write on anything you have, but just you can write the ABCs down one side of the paper, and just try to think of as many emotion words as you can, just one per letter. But we're going to just take 2 minutes to do this. So let's take 2 minutes and just kind of take off and think about those letters and those words, letters and words. Okay, got about 10 more seconds. Okay. So were there some letters that you're missing a word for? We're putting it in. Oh, those are good. What letters are you missing?
I.
Anybody have an I? Irritated? Isolated? Impatient?
Mhm.
K? Kind? Kindness? Anybody have an O? So I'm looking in here and it says okay. I'm feeling okay. Ornery? I'm feeling ornery. Q, quiet. Would be a good one. The one that I always find hard is X, because there are a lot of words like excited that have that X, you don't hear the E, but they start with an E. But that's also a great opportunity to talk about sounds, right? And silent sounds of those beginning sounds. Q, yeah, quiet. Did anybody have a Z? Another thing with the X, sometimes we'll just do XOXO for love, Zestful, that's good. Zen, ooh, that's a good one too. Zebra, zany, zealous. All right, you guys came up with lots of them. So it's fun to try to make that list across the ABCs and you have something for every letter. And then think about, how many, because that gives us a wide range of words. And that's what we're trying to do with this vocabulary around social emotional. So how many of those words am I actually teaching children? When I listen to the words that they're actually using, that gives us lots of clues about the words they're using and the context that they're using them in. Are they getting them? And then we kind of know how to keep increasing that vocabulary. But it's kind of a fun one to think about how you could expand their vocabulary and relate that to letter knowledge. And there are lots of fun books now that have filling words in them. And, there's one I think I have in later that's kindness to share, A to Z, and it talks about, across the alphabet, things we could do to be kind. F is for feelings, taking like a different letter every day to think about that and talk about that. So those are just some examples of books. On your resource sheet, I did include the books that are in the presentation. So you have those in case you wanted that list. So the other thing to, just to think about the things that we already do, the things that are in our environment that might be a missed opportunity, such as like this one where they used the little sticks with the photos on them for their different centers, because this was a classroom where they only, only so many children could be in a center at a time. But why not have their name on those, right? Because it's one more opportunity for them to see their name, to recognize their name, that print awareness kind of piece, and for other children to see it. So just think about those missed opportunities that we have that we could just tweak just a little and add that opportunity for a child. Think about all those fun things you do, like you can take that book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt, and go on a letter hunt. And, if you have the alphabet up and just on certain days have certain letters missing and, make a big deal out of the fact that the letters have escaped and they're hiding. So find your letter buddy and see if you can find the missing letters. And if you'll notice with the letter buddies that the buddies they're the same color. So, Will and Jamal. So if a child, again, if the print's hard for them to recognize, they can find their partner based on the color of their little card. So trying to think across children and how each child can be successful with that. And, with this book, if you guys use this one, this is the one where the letters hide in things that start with the the letter like A, A flew high in an airplane and H hid under a hat. So giving children, to pair them up and give them a letter and let them find something in the room that, so if I have, T, then we could go hide it in a truck. So it's a fun way to get them to start thinking about those beginning sounds and the vocabulary, the labels of things. And yes, we might have to help them, but it's a fun way to do that, to practice that. And then just think about, a lot of times we would, with the phonological awareness and the segmenting of sounds, like as we would take children's pictures and cut them into the number of sounds of their name. So like Mateo, and then they could put them together, as they're learning. So there are 3 different sounds in my name. And then other children also like to put different children's together, but you could also do that with getting children to, so what's your face look like when you're excited? And then think about those words in the segmenting. So more practice around those, the kind of phonics and phonological awareness. And just another fun one, which you guys have probably done, but like, again, when you think about the letters that are missing, so let's say B's missing that day. And so you try really hard to not say B as a beginning sound. So you're practicing beginning sounds, and it's crazy. It's funny, it's silly, and it keeps everybody laughing all day because everybody messes up because, you just like, if you have a child and his name's Blake and you just are so used to saying Blake, and it's like, oh, wait, B's missing. So it's late today, or who wants to play with the locks? And it's just a fun way to practice that skill. And then these are some things that we sent home to families. So practicing rhyming, because we know how important rhyming is. And that for some children, that rhyming, even though we start early, like with rhyming, that rhyming can be hard for them. So think about, if you're in the car or you're on a bus, playing I Spy. So I spy something that rhymes with hat. Oh, there's a cat. Or I spy something that begins with a B, and think about, okay, that's a good time to practice what it sounds like, right? Or kindness. I spy kindness. I spy kindness. Grandma dropped her walking cane and Jamila picked it up for her. How kind. So, making games out of things so there's more opportunities to practice those things. Then here's another one that you guys probably have ideas for this also, but what kinds of books do you use to encourage writing? So we talked about that. More Bears is kind of a fun one, but heart prints. So this particular classroom, they read some different books, heart prints being one of those, and then they made a heart. And you can see children weren't writing. Some of them were, you can see some letters on there. A lot of them just drew pictures. So when you saw someone being caring or kind, then they would take one of the little hearts and draw a picture or write something on it or ask a teacher to write. And, they kept until they filled up their caring hearts. But it really encouraged them to do that. The 10 thank you letters is about a little pig who's writing thank you letter to his grandma, and the rabbit comes over to play, and then he wants to write thank you letters. And that's actually that picture on there is one from a classroom where they were reading the 10 thank you letters. And so they were thinking about who at our school do we want to write thank you letters to? And so they came up with this whole list. So this one was for the bus drivers. And so kids worked together. And so, they would not one person would just write thank you. Like each child would write a different letter. They would figure out what they wanted to draw. So they're working together, that kind of social part, but they're writing thank you notes, and they did it for people all over the school. And just that book alone is what encouraged them to think about that. So another piece is, really thinking about the children that are in our classrooms and what kind of books we have and how we're choosing books and making sure that children can find themselves in the books that are in our classrooms. And, you hear people all the time say, when I was growing up, the books that were in classrooms, I wasn't in any of them. I couldn't find myself in any of them. And when we think about the age of children we work with, and that's when they're developing that self-identity and that I'm important and I'm special and I can't find myself anywhere, that from a social emotional standpoint can be something that's really hard. So really think about the diversity of the children that we have in a classroom or that we work with. And do we have books? Do we have things in the environment that really represent where they can find themselves? And the other part of just inclusion, thinking about the diversity and children developing that sense of kindness and empathy and, how we can support that through books. And, for years, a lot of people have used that strictly no elephant books where the little boy has an elephant and he gets to his little clubhouse that he goes to all the time, but because he has an elephant now, they won't let him in. And there's a big sign on the door that says strictly no elephants. And so they end up at the end forming their own club. But there's a newer book now called Can I Join Your Club? And the duck, he like first starts off with the lions. And he said, can I join your Lions Club? I really want to join your Lions Club. And the lion's like, well, can you roar? And he goes, I'll show you how. So the lion roars. And then the duck's like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And he starts to do it. And he goes, roar, quack. And the lion goes, denied. You're just not what we're looking for. And so he's like, okay, I'll go to the next place. Well, he keeps going, and every place he goes, you're just not quite what we're looking for. So it's denied, denied. So then he gets to by the time they keep saying denied, again, great conversations with children because his whole body language has changed. He's just like really discouraged. And then he's like, I know. And he says, I know what I need to do. So he starts his own club. And as the different animals come up and they're like, so can I join your club? And he goes, well, I have one question to ask you. Do you want to be a member of this club? And they're like, yes. And he's like, accepted. You're just what we've been looking for. And so, I mean, the conversations you could have around, what it felt like when he was being denied, and then just that acceptance and that inclusion. So what this classroom did, and this is not the exact picture of what they did because I didn't have it, but it was very similar. And you'll see a different one a little bit later, but they literally took a refrigerator box and they made a club. And they made an all or welcome sign. And the fun thing about this is knowing that every single one of those letters was made by a different child in the classroom as they were doing all or welcome. And they talked about how they were going to welcome everybody into their club and what they needed to do. So again, taking that book and engaging them in a way that they really wanted to include everybody and had those conversations about how they could do that and the different things they might need to think about to include everybody. So just how important those conversations are. Okay, so let me take a we've got, well, all right, a little bit of time. I have lots of slides here, so I want to make sure we get through these. So another thing is, as we think about diversity, if you have children in your classrooms or, a child who has a family member that's in the military, so they go through those deployment and then coming back home and just all those feelings around that. On your resource sheet, you have it says the Military Families Learning Network, and they have a whole list of books around different things like deployment, homecomings, those kinds of things. But they also have some book nooks that go with some of their books. So the Love Spot one is talking about, all the little spots on an Army uniform, and that every time those little spots represent love spots. And so, the dad or the mom is like, and every time I see one of those spots, I think about you. So what this one family did is they made a little book out of hearts, calling them love spots, before the dad was deployed. And, the child was like, one of my love spots is daddy reading my favorite book, Brown Bear, to me. And then dad was like, hi, buddy, have a fun day today. I love you, daddy. So they made this whole little book of love spots. So just thinking about, again, the diversity of children, and that's a great resource. And a lot of those books you can build on. That wouldn't necessarily have to be just a military family to do love spots, or hating goodbyes, because it could be there's a child in your classroom who moves away. So expanding on those. Adapting books so that all children in our settings have access, can interact with and read books. So some of these are just resources that I'm giving you in case you don't know about them. But the Sherlock Center, they have all these books, and they're typical books that we have in our classrooms that they have adaptations for. They're free. You can just download them. So that's also on your website. And then thinking about, where you see the little brown bear with the circle around it. Think about those children that pages are hard to turn because of motor kinds of things. And just those little felt things that go on the bottom of chairs, because you can get those in different sizes. Just putting those on each page makes it just easy enough for a child with motor kind of issues to turn a page. So thinking of all the possibilities of things we can do to make sure that children can access those books and get those same opportunities. And then this is just another resource. It's also on your resource sheet about making book corners accessible to all kids. And it goes through all kinds of different ideas around environments, material adaptations, adult support, child preferences. So again, just a really good resource to have. Okay. And then think about, sometimes there are many more books now before that are diverse. So it makes it a little bit easier now, but think about those classroom books. This was an idea from the beginning of the year. It was a program where the rooms had like the owl room, the ladybug room, those kinds of things. And so on the home visits before school started, they took pictures of the kids and then just asked them, a little information about what were their favorite things. And they put together this class book, and everybody got a copy of it. So think about how that supports, not only kids love looking at stuff like that, so that exposure to print, but also learning each other's names. And, it was just a great way for children and families to get to know the names of the children in the classroom. And if you have new children that come in during the year, you just add it to the book and they get a copy also. So that's a great way to represent diversity across children. And then thinking about, again, that how important it is for children to feel welcome in our settings. And I mean, that's such a huge social emotional piece. And so on your resource sheet, I put this little letter, and you would have to adapt it because it's kind of long, but I love the idea behind it. So this particular teacher sent this letter to each child. So they had it the night before the first day of school. So I'm just going to read this to you quickly. The night before school is exciting and fun. There's so many things to be done. Your clothes are ready. Your backpack is too. Your classroom is filled with fun things to do. But sometimes we get the jitters deep down, making it hard to fall fast asleep. So I've made this magic confetti for you, full of promises for the whole year through. On this night, when you lay down your head, just sprinkle some under your pillow in bed. The confetti will help you sleep through the night and wake up in the morning fresh and bright. I'll sprinkle the confetti under my pillow too, because I'm so super excited to see you. Sweet dreams, Miss Clark. So think about shortening that, for preschoolers, but how special that would be for a child to get that and have a parent read that to them and to know you're excited about them coming. So I just think it's a great example, again, of that length. Another favorite strategy is strive for 5, which is so easy to remember. And literally it's just 5 back and forth with a child. So research wise, one of the things that we know makes a difference with relationships, with language, as well as friendship skills is the back and forth of conversations, the reciprocity and the length of those conversations. But they don't have to be real long. You just want to make sure you're having 5 exchanges. And that doesn't mean every time we talk with a child, but across the day, each child should have strive for 5 moments with you. So this is an example from, they had been reading books about Africa. And so the little boy's like, Miss Jenny, look, I made a giant car with the blocks. So it'd be super easy for us just to go, high five, what a cool car, which is a great interaction. But again, if I haven't had that strive for 5 moment with this child, I want to try to extend it a little bit. So Jude, what an amazing car. Where are you going to go in your car? I'm going to drive to Africa to see the elephants like the one in our book. And then she's like, whoa, you're going to go all the way to Africa? Remember when we looked at the map to see where Africa was when we were reading the book this morning? I think it's going to take you a long time to get there. And he's like, remember, but my car can go really fast, can fly and go really fast. We'll have fun and take lots of pictures and you can show us what you saw in Africa. And then he came back. I mean, he did his little fly in and came back and drew this whole little story about what he saw in Africa. So just again, just extending that conversation a little bit just encourages language heard, language used, and then for him to make the story about that experience. So another resource is on your resource sheet is the Barton Research Lab. And there are tons of resources on that particular site. But one of the ones I wanted to point out to you, it's called Fun Friday. And it was really developed for families. So you can use these to engage families, but you can also use them yourself, in classrooms. But this one I love because it's like, would you rather be a lion or be a tiger? Why? So think again of the conversation and the stories that children could make up about that. Would you rather read a book or paint a picture? Would you rather read minds or be able to fly? So there are lots of fun resources that again really promote that link that we're talking about here. And then this classroom, when a child was absent, so they took pictures of children, like full pictures, and then they laminated them and put them on the little clips. So when a child was absent, they had a special place in the room where they would put the picture of that child, and they would have conversations around, what are we going to do when they get back to make sure that they feel special, that they know that we missed them. So kids would draw pictures, they would write letters. And then I want to show you this example from a classroom. This little girl had been out for a week and they didn't know she was coming back that day. So nobody set this up. The teachers did not tell the kids to do this because they didn't know that Tammy was coming back. But it shows you how when we model those behaviors, that children really do these things also. Oh no, I messed it up. Sorry.
Sammy's here, guys. Okay. Oh, there is room. I think there's room over there. Oh, that's okay. Wait till they finish and you can go here. There's room right here. Look. See? Look on. Sorry, you got room too. One group time.
I just think it's such a great example of when we do those kinds of things where we have those conversations around how are we going to make Tammy know that we missed her? What kinds of things are we going to do? That when you do that enough, that creates that atmosphere, that social environment where children do those things. You model those things and then they do them. Also think about if you have program-wide expectations or even just rules in your room, those kinds of things. Often those words are like safe, friendly, respectful. What did those things mean? So we can't just expect children to know what those means, but we have to talk about those. Again, vocabulary. What's it look like? What does it not look like? And we don't always do the what does it not look like. So think about demonstrating, what does it look like to be respectful? What does it not look like? Because in my head, that just gives me more ideas of what that means. So, and there are different books that we can use books to help talk about what those things mean, or learn different ways to say hello. And, on here, you can see where they put photos of the children actually being safe, being friendly, being respectful. And then as children, those little buttons, as children did things like that, they were being friendly, either that child would go put their little face on the friendly part, or another child would say, oh, well, you were friendly to me, I'm going to put your face up there. So great way to kind of support that learning again. Think about rhyming, those times of the day that children that are predictable, that they know they're going to happen, like goodbye time. So you got that social emotional literacy piece again. These are such fun ways to practice rhyming, like, and kids can pick their favorite ones, and that's a lot of them. We wouldn't necessarily use all those, but they're fun ways to say goodbye and practice rhyming. So jobs, there's always that special job that everybody wants to do. So that book Pumpkin Soup is about, it has the squirrel, the cat, and the duck, and has really fun vocabulary words. And duck decides that he wants to do a different job, and it causes all kinds of problems, and he goes away. So the little song, I just wrote that from what happened in the book, but you sing it in a sad voice. So, you're practicing what's a sad voice sound like, and then it's the rhyming. So just being intentional about how we can link these areas and provide more opportunities. And again, I think that the vocabulary words in that book are so fun. And problem solving, what could Duck do? And just taking those parts of the day, when we think about walking feet, which is used a lot, or, just again, how can I work opportunities to practice some of those, what the expectation is, which would be that social emotional piece, as well as some of those literacy type skills. All right, I'm going to show you another way that we've used this a lot for engagement kinds of thing, and it's a really easy, fun thing to do, and you can do it for emotions also. But it's another, so you just take construction paper and you start off with a small hole, and then on the next piece you cut a bigger hole until it gets bigger, and just staple them together. So let me show you. You'll recognize this. Okay, so guess what our book's about today? Then you open it and it gets a little bit bigger. You turn the page, the hole gets a little bit bigger. Probably recognize this, right? So it's Llama Llama Mrs. Mama. And that's a book, that's used a lot at the beginning of the year, because a lot of children do miss their mom at the beginning of the year. So it's a fun book to use. But it's also a fun book to use later in the year if you have a new child coming into the class, and getting children to think about, do you remember how you felt the first day of school when you might not have known anybody, and you didn't know where the bathroom was, or you didn't know when we were going to go play, or you didn't know what all these things were that were in the environment. So, and those feeling faces you have on your resource sheet also, they're from the Challenging Behavior website. So you can download those. There's lots of different resources on that website. But part of this is getting children to think about how they felt on that first day of school, but they also they take on different roles. So like this little boy was, well, when he comes in, I'll show him where to hang up his coat. So children take different roles to help the new child feel welcome and special. So that Bev Boss song, We've Been Waiting for You to Come to This Place, if you know that one, wherever you're from, we're glad that you've come. We've been waiting for you to come to this place is a fun song to teach children to use, and just the message that it sends. We're excited that you're here. And then this book is a newer book that I found recently, and it really is a book about kindness and diversity, but it's about a little girl who has just moved to a new place, and she's excited about going to school, but she also is like, will I have friends? And then when she gets there, where she moved from, everybody kind of looked the same. This new place, it's really diverse. And so the whole book is about how kids welcomed her, and she was afraid they might make fun of her name because it was different. So a lot of those issues that come up, it's a great book to use to have those conversations around. Okay. And then just thinking about those friendship skills, and not all children have those skills, and we know that there are certain skills that children who get along find it easier to make friends that they have. So on the Head Start Inclusion website, there's some visuals. So that child who's struggling with making friends, so, we can teach them, how do I approach somebody to play? What do I say? What do I do? So there's some visuals to support that. And then on the Challenging Behavior website, there's a whole set. It's called Peer Mediated Skills, but I put it on your research sheet, and it says friendships, peer mediated cards. And so it has little posters you can print out, how you can practice those steps and role play those steps. And again, think about, what does it look like? What does it not look like? So those can really help support children who might be struggling with that. And a lot of people use the super friend idea in classrooms, but I love what this particular teacher did. She had the children think about, what's your super friend power, and look at the things they came up with. I'm helpful, I'm respectful, I'm caring, I'm kind. And then she made little buttons for the kids. So my super friend power is kindness, and it shows that child being kind, like a photo of that child. And then they could take those home, and it's just a great way to support their competence and confidence around that. And you can see she did a cute little thing with kind of superhero kinds of things. And I Can Be a Super Friend is also on the Challenging Behavior website. Okay, I'm going to keep going here and see if we get through all this quickly. So this is, and you guys probably do this too, but it's one of my favorite things, where you take white paper and a white crayon and you write on it, and then they paint to find out what it is. And you can make that so fun by saying, last night I wrote everybody's name on these pieces of paper, and they're like, there's nothing on that, because it's like white, you can't see anything. And you're like, oh, well, you're going to need to paint it. And when you paint it, you can find out, so it might be a partner that during the day at some point they do something with, but we usually did it in small groups. And then you can group children intentionally, like those that, there's some kids that as soon as they see that T, they're going to go, oh, that's Trey. And then there's another child who's not going to recognize the T. So you can kind of support whoever's at, right? Or, and that table one is one that a family did after we had done that in the class. They did that at home for chores. So the kids would take paint and figure out what their chore was. And it had the word there. So again, kind of vocabulary, alphabet knowledge, those kinds of things. The other thing we did is little periodically little notes. And so Trey would open his, and it had Juan's name in it. So again, you would pair up for something during the day. And just thinking about all those different books that you use to teach children about those friendship skills. And Misha Makes Friends is a newer one, and that's about a little girl who she's like really good at making things, but one of the things that she has a hard time making is friends. And so it kind of goes through that, and it's just a really nice book. Clark the Shark, of course, rhyming, but Clark's like really loud and just kind of takes over everything. And it's kind of how he learns how to bring that in a little. And then just using books again, like The Knight and the Dragon, where you have pages where with words, and then you have pages where they're those pictures, so you can get kids to really have those conversations and build on that. Then you guys, this book, Groovy Joe, I just want you to watch how she does the friendship part and the emotion part in here.
Well, yes, he does want to eat the ice cream, and maybe Groovy Joe will share. But look at his face. His eyes are big. His eyebrows are kind of slanted down. What's he feeling, Gideon?
He's feeling like the tummy will be empty.
You just said a word, though. You said that Groovy Joe is
Worried.
he's worried. I wonder why he's so worried. Why do you think he's worried, Davy?
Because in the end of the story, the tub with the ice cream will be melted and it'll spill.
Maybe the ice cream will melt and spill. Let's keep reading to find out. He took out a spoon. He put on a bib and pulled up a chair. What did Joe say?
It's awesome to share.
It's awesome to share. And everyone sang, I love my doggy ice cream. I love my doggy ice cream. Roar! What are you feeling when I say roar? You feel scared? Is it a real scared or a silly scared? Yeah, we know what's gonna happen. We're just pretending to.
But such a great example of engage. Well, that book in and of itself, again, kind of choosing books where kids, just the book itself lends it to being engaged. But she did such a nice job of kind of working in that emotion part also with that. Getting that link. On Monday when it rained, there are book nooks on the Challenging Behavior website. If you aren't familiar with those, there's a lot of different books, and we're in the process of updating that book list. That book list has not been updated in like 20 years. So we're updating the book list and developing new book nooks to go with those books. So that'll be coming. You can look for that, but there's still some really good books and book nooks on there. And that's a great book that lends itself to making a classroom book, you know, because it talks about different feelings on each day. What's nice about that book is the facial expressions are really good in that book. And from a literacy standpoint, it gives a situation like, you know, on Monday, I wanted to go ride bikes with my friend, but it was raining. And then you have to turn the page to see the photo of the little boy and the feeling. So the kids can guess how they think he felt. So it's a nice, just the layout of the book's nice. And then think about how you could build on that with a classroom book. Singing those songs that, you know, are familiar, but adding those, if you're sad and you know it, cry, tear, boo-hoo. If you're scared and you know it, ask for help. But also thinking about from an early literacy standpoint, changing the words of you know, a little bit, same tune, but did you ever see a cat in a hat? Did you ever see a duck in a truck? No, I never, no, I never, no, I never, no, I never, no, I never saw a cat in a hat, or those kinds of things. Just fun, engaging ways to practice some of those things. Favorite movies. We know kids talk about their favorite movies all the time. So make some books, take some of those favorite movies, like characters out of those movies. And things like this, when Lightning McQueen wins the race, Lightning McQueen feels, there aren't right or wrong answers. I mean, they can kind of guess, but it's a great way to get them to talk about feelings and talk about why they would pick that or why they think he felt proud. Happy, sad today talks about you can feel two feelings at the same time, which again is another really important concept for us to talk about. The other part that's kind of fun, towards the end of this book, the little girl starts making up words for if she's sad and mad, it's smad. So think about from a literacy standpoint, phonological, that play on words. It's kind of a fun way to do that. I feel love and I'm happy. So love happy, you know, those kinds of things. Again, just a fun way to kind of practice some of those skills. Kindness. Lots of good books around kindness now. That Be Kind one's really a great book. And I told you about the kindness to share. The little kindness snippet jar really wants to get in the kindness snippet jar, but he doesn't know what he needs to do to be kind to get in there. So a lot of classrooms have done a kindness jar. This was another one where the classroom made a kindness castle. And again, such a great way, kindness castle it sounds the same, but it's different letters, kind of building on that. Some kids, every time they saw kindness, would draw a picture. They made a little, the little link around the room. Empathy, there was a study that came out of Harvard that said like from ages 4 to 7 is a critical period for children to develop these lifelong habits and values. And so because of that, we should really be doing a lot around teaching kindness and empathy and compassion. So in this particular classroom, this is kind of a short little video, but they had a sadness captain. So when they saw a child who was sad or needed comforting, the sadness captain would go, and she had some little visuals and things. Now, this little girl did not like us videotaping her, so you'll see this, but look what she does. So she wanted to hug. So the visuals that she would show the child, then the child could pick what they wanted. But what a great way to build that skill, right? Perspective taking. To be empathetic, you have to take someone's perspective. So on the Mind in the Making website, there are more, they don't call them book nooks, but book tips. And they take books and they're broken down like executive function skills. So perspective taking is one of them, and it has several different books and ideas and tips of things that we can do to kind of promote that. So that's another resource. Think about right now how many children are worried or anxious about things just because of, that's true in general, but now it's just, we live in a crazy world, right? So some of those books that you can read to really promote those conversations, and it will be okay is a more of a story where when I feel worried and I will be okay, both have lots of strategies in them for what I can do if I'm feeling worried. So how important that is. Being mad. So I'm going to go into fast gear here because we don't have much time left and just kind of scoot through some of these. But, again, a book nook, but this has a lot of movement in it. Kids really like this book. So doing that. I'm not going to show you this video time-wise. Well, wait, I am, because this is an important one. So use your words. We say that all the time, right? Use your words.
One of my favorite anecdotes is I was in a Head Start class once talking with a teacher, and a kid on the other side of the room said really loudly to another, "You damn son of a bitch." I was kind of curious what the teacher was going to do, and this is what she did. She went over to where this child was, knelt down next to him, put her arm around him, whispered in his ear, and one of the things she whispered was, "I'm proud of you." She whispered a couple of more things and came back to where I was standing. As she came back, the little boy turned to the kid next to her and said, "I'm sorry." And the other kid said, "You're not supposed to swear. You're supposed to use friendly words." The kid said, "I know. Would you still be my friend?" The child said, "Yes, I will." The teacher got back to where I was standing and I said, "I thought I heard him swear, and I think I heard you say you were proud of him." She said, "That's right, Dan. Until last week, when he got upset, he would hit or kick. We've been telling him to use words. He used words. I'm proud of him."
Okay. I think that's so powerful because most of us, that would not have been our first response to that. Being able to say, "Whoa, you used your words. You should be so proud of yourself." That's probably not what we would have thought. But think about through his eyes. We've been saying, use your words. He used his words. We just got to teach him some different words to use, right? But he used his words. He didn't throw things like he had been doing. So that to me is such a powerful reminder of through their eyes, how confusing it is sometimes when we say, use your words, they use your words, and then they still get in trouble about it, right? And, just thinking about, and I don't know if you saw on that slide, but, instead of use your words, let's think of a word that matches what you're feeling. or, is there a sound you can make to help us think of a word that for what you're feeling? Because it may not be the word that we're using. So if you think about what children need, they need to be able to label an emotion. They need to know what it feels like, and they need strategies to deal with that emotion. So sometimes when we do the little figures and get different kids, this was one example of a 4-year-old, but to think about, like, when you feel angry, where do you feel it? So they start really paying attention. And there are different books that really focus on some of those feelings. So the emotion detective, a little spot of feelings, is being a detective. And it just talks about different clues and cues. Diane Albert, you guys are probably familiar. She has tons of books on feelings, and she has a website that I didn't put on here. I forgot, but her website has lots of free resources, but it's, so you'll see that book is on your list. So it's Diane Albert. These are 2 more books that have where the characters in it really talk about, like Roaring Mad Riley, her hands curl up and her shoulders go up when she gets mad. And so it gives us lots of opportunities to get children to think about how they're feeling. Again, on the Head Start Center for Inclusion, there's some visuals, self-regulation visuals. So we want to give children those strategies. On the Challenging Behavior website, there are all sorts of resources around strategies that we can give children as they're learning to manage those emotions. So, as well as reading different books again that give children ways to calm their body. If they're into dragons, on Head Start Inclusion, there's a dragon, there's a little visuals for a dragon girl and a little dragon boy, about kind of, again, it's that same idea about just taking those breaths, blowing out like if something's on fire. And then Tucker Turtle, you guys are probably familiar with, but that's also on the Challenging Behavior website. And that's, kids, a lot of kids really will relate to this one. And they'll either do, oh, think like a turtle, if they're starting to get upset or somebody else is, or do the turtle tuck, because you practice that, stop, go into my shell and take 3 deep breaths, and then come out and think of a solution. And there's also a home version of that. So if you're using it in a classroom, you can share that home version with families. But I also wanted to tell you about the Buddy the Bulldozer book. That was actually from a parent wrote that book, that they were using Tucker Turtle in her son's classroom, and he just wasn't relating to the turtle, but he really needed to learn some strategies to calm down, and he loved bulldozers. So she wrote this book, Buddy the Bulldozer, and it is great. And when Buddy gets, they're working together digging, and then Buddy gets mad and he starts fuming, his bulldozer starts fuming. And then it goes through how he learns to cool his engine. And it goes through the whole process, because after he cools his engine, and then he thinks with the other, one a bulldozer, but it's another, piece of equipment, they problem solve about some different things they could do. And then they try one together. So it goes through that whole process of calming down and then coming up with a different solution. So I think that's a great idea, because not every child is going to relate to the turtle. So also that key piece in there, when we read books and when we talk about calming strategies, we have to also do solutions. And that great vocabulary word, what does that mean? What are solutions? So instead of throwing that fire truck at you like I usually do, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, and then I'm going to try to think of something else I can do. So going through lots of different solutions. And again, on the Challenging Behavior website, there's solution kits for classrooms and homes with visuals. And one classroom had a problem solver. So if problems came up and the child couldn't figure it out, the problem solver would help them do that. So building those independent skills. There's also a scripted story on the website about we can be problem solvers. Again, there's a home version of that also. But, one teacher put the solution kit on her window, because her window, when they were outside, you could see their window, because where do a lot of problems come up? On the playground. So they did it in the classroom, but it also was that reminder to do that on the playground, and kids could go to the window and practice that. fishing for solutions. Where are we? Oh, 24. Okay, we're running out of time here. So this was one little boy in a classroom that I had, and he lived with his granddad, and his granddad loved to go fishing. So that's all this little boy talked about. And he was another one who really needed to practice calming down and solutions. So we just did the little solution cards on fish and put a blue sheet in the corner, put magnets on them, and kids could go fishing for solutions. And I mean, it was for a specific child, but they would come up with problems so they could go fishing for solutions, which was great because all we want them to do is practice that, right? And then this was in the penguin room, and they literally kept practicing after they read books about, big problem, small problem. Rex Rexit is a great book to do problem solving around. Typical that kids knocking blocks down. Books with problems and solutions, things like Ernest the Moose Who Doesn't, He's Too Big to Fit in the Book, and getting children to predict and problem solve. What can you do? Or can I play too? The worm wants to play ball. He doesn't have any arms. So what are they going to do? So picking books where they can problem solve, how important movement is. Lots of fun books that get children engaged and moving. And Move Your Mood is one of the ones they're given away. Can You Make a Scary Face? Really fun books around that. And sometimes you just need to have fun, right? Especially like with the craziness of everything going on. Have a giggle center. Have things during the day that are just fun, silly moments. And just that, ways you can, again, link that. Being able to just relax and have fun and linking that to some of those fun books that support doing that. Think about all the books we talked about. Another idea is to have a story rope around your room and just put up something related to different books that you're reading around the room. So if you start to read a book and it's about bears, do you remember when we read Polar Bear or Corduroy? And so it's your kids are remembering the story. They can retell the story. It's helping memory wise. They will just on their own go up with other children and talk about the different books. So it's a great way to have conversations around that. This was from a classroom who at the end of the year, they wanted to leave little notes. It was called the Ladybug Classroom for the new children who would be coming into that classroom. So they did this on the board, but then they hid little notes around the room, little welcome notes and things that were special about getting to be a ladybug in the room, and they hid them around the room. What a great way, what a great example of linking social emotional literacy. So essential ABCs, if we're always conversing, we're always connecting, and we're always building competence, we're automatically linking those important social, emotional, and literacy skills. Okay, we did it. We made it. It's 5:27. So anybody have comments or things you want to share? I know we were kind of rushing through that last part there, but any